One world currency.
The New World Order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is August 15th, 2012. Welcome to today's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. And joining me for 2 hours to go over the craziness and analyze the just insanity that is going on over the past few days is frequent guest to the program, and I guess you could just call him a regular contributor here to the radio broadcast, my good friend and fellow radio show host, author, investigative journalist, Mike Vail. Mike, welcome back.
Hey, man, it's good to be here, and I'm here as often as I can, man, and it's good to get all this information out and hash it out because there's much to discuss.
Yeah, and tonight we have a ton of things to discuss, everything from Syria, Israel versus Iran possibly, coming up for the election perhaps, and a few other things. Really quick, before I forget, I just want to say right now, and I guess it's been going on for the past at least 4 or 5 hours now, for the first time in history, unprecedented, that the United Kingdom has police outside the Ecuadorian embassy in London because Julian Assange is inside, and the UK has threatened that they will enter and take him by force, which I don't know if you realize that, but that is completely against international law.
Definitely.
And if you want to talk about sparking an international incident, because Ecuador offered Julian Assange political asylum. And apparently, the UK is none too happy about that.
I mean, this is so strange because, you have Obama doing the very same thing, celebrating, talking to people about making movies about the capture and killing of bin Laden or whatever have you, whether it's real or not. I mean, they leak so much more information, way more than WikiLeaks ever could. The U.S. government does all the time, okay? But the problem is that if this guy's legitimate, which I don't know if he is or not, he's leaking information that is detrimental to various governments. And that can get you with 2 holes in your head and buried out into the desert.
Yep, and even, I think my personal feelings on Assange, some people get pissed when I say this, I think he's controlled by Mossad. That's my personal feelings. It's always amazing that anytime WikiLeaks leaked documents, that Israel was the only government that was never really affected negatively by any of these document leaks.
You have a point now that I really think about that.
Look at it.
I mean...
Ever. Ever. All the
maybe
shady things they do, Mike, and you're going to tell me that there's not one document behind the scenes? Come on.
Maybe you know how not to get killed. Possibly that could be it too. It's like because Mossad will kill you. That's no doubt about it. I saw recently where they were killing off these Iranian scientists. They were using magnetic bombs. They would stick them on the car while you're driving next to them in a motorcycle and drive off.
By the way, is the MO of the Mossad. That's one of their favorite ways to assassinate people is ride up on motorcycle and stick a magnetic bomb to the side of a car and drive off and then detonate it. This is their MO. You can go look this up. I'm not making this up. Mike's not making this up, right, Mike?
No, matter of fact, this was in various articles. But there's an ex-Mossad officer who wrote 2 or 3 books that I have. I'm gonna look them up right now. But they lay out. One of them was in Operation Babylon. What they're doing to Iran now, they did the very same thing to Iraq. Killing off their nuclear scientists, bombing them in the same way they did in Syria when Syria tried to develop the same way. It is not a joke, and these people don't play games.
You see Ray McGovern? He says pretty much we're at war with Iran. It's just not a shooting war right now, but we're certainly, Mossad's assassinating their scientists, and if you don't think the CIA at least knows what's going on, you're out of your mind. And we're attacking them with viruses. We're helping Israel attack them with viruses. People go, oh, Stuxnet, come on, there's rumors. I've heard that, Israel made it, but is that true? Yeah, it is true. Israel and the State Department of the United States of America.
They admitted it. Recently, they admitted it. Yes, it was.
Hillary Clinton's on record as admitting to it a couple years ago, very quietly. Maybe it was a year ago. Maybe I'd say a couple months after Stuxnet became a real problem and Iran started, right when the Bushehr reactor, they had problems with it and they had to shut it down for a few months. Right around then is when. And I found the article and I posted it on Federal Jack, and I can't remember the name of it right now. Just go on Federal Jack in the search bar and type in Stuxnet virus, and it should come up. But they admitted it, Mike. She admitted, the State Department, we helped them make it.
Check out the author I was talking about. His name was Viktor Ostrovsky. And one of the books is called By Way of Deception, The Making of Mossad Officer. And the information that he put out was really, really harsh. And he got a lot of blowback from Mossad. And it's interesting to see their methods because they don't care about blowback. They don't care about, what people say about them because they can always use the cover of, being anti-Semitic and whatnot, which is a cover. It's an old cover that's been used way too often. But they don't play games. I think they're probably some of the worst. They make the CIA look like choir boys.
Oh yeah, and how do you know it's bad when speaking of their wanting to go to war with Israel, their blood or with Iran, their this bloodlust that people like Netanyahu and Ehud Barak have. By the way, Ehud Barak, you should go look at his ties to 9/11. Very interesting. That's all I'll say. I'm not going to say he pulled it off, but I'll say that he is connected to it, without a doubt. Anybody that doesn't even a slight bit of research into the Mossad end of the connection to 9/11, his name comes up. So again, all these same players come up, and then they're pushing this fear. Oh my God, Mike, Iran might get a nuke. Really? You guys have nukes, and you're the biggest bully in the Middle East.
This is so hilarious on their point because guess what? Saudi Arabia wants nukes. They're working with Pakistan to get them. Okay.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, wasn't Saudi Arabia supposedly the supplier of the quote unquote hijackers from 9/11? I mean, we know the real story, but you know what I mean. According to the official story, all the hijackers were Saudis. So shouldn't we be concerned about them getting nukes? But no, we're concerned about Iran. And I'm not saying Ahmadinejad and those whatever the hell they have over there, mullahs or whatever the frig run it. I'm not saying they're all saints. Not by any means, okay? None of these world leaders are. But who are we to tell them, you can't have nukes. We can have nukes, and we can run around invading every other country and bullying everybody, but you better not get any type of weapon whatsoever to even level the playing field, or we're going to invade your country.
Oh, you get respect when you get a nuclear weapon, okay? Just talk to North Korea. We don't even know. Honestly, I don't even know if
We deal with them a lot differently than we do with other nations, don't we?
You get, taken to the big boy table and you get treated with respect. It's like, okay, let's sit down, let's have some talks, let's discuss things. Look at Pakistan. They treat Pakistan a certain way, but still they have respect for them because they have nuclear weapons.
Well, I think that's what they're afraid of with Iran, Mikey. I think that if Iran gets a nuke, now it's a whole complete different way of talking to them and dealing with them, and they don't want that.
No, because at best, and this, of course, from other analysts, at best, you can only stall Iran for a year or two from getting nuclear weapons. So it's useless.
Yeah. So what's the point? See, to me, I look at it that the like McGovern said, the bombing of the nuke sites is like. That's just their door to get in and continue bombing the hell out of the country and start World War III, basically. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break. Stay tuned. Mike and I will be right back. Israel prepared for a 30-day war with Iran. It's the headline, ladies and gentlemen, right from Mike's website, stratrisks.com. I've got it posted up on Federal Jack, and you can go. There's a link to his site at the bottom of the article with the original link, and you can go check out his site, which I urge you to. Mike, what's your little tagline? Go check it out because the CIA.
Oh yeah. The CIA visits, so should you. I should put that at the bottom. I have a Latin phrase, pre munitus, pre monitus, which means forewarned is being forearmed.
Oh, ain't that the truth? And by the way, Mike's not lying when he says that the CIA visits. I've seen this.
No, you've seen the logs.
Yeah, I've seen the screenshots of his logs coming into his site. So yeah, I've seen it firsthand myself. And Mike, getting back onto the subject of Israel versus Iran here, and your article, the article that you posted, this is just. To me, there's some places out there that they'll yell and scream, "Oh my God, this, that, the other thing." But this article is very telling. It's very. I don't know how to. It's not. I don't want to say professional because all your stuff is professional, but it's just laid out. I guess succinct or whatever would be proper term.
Cold, calculated.
That's it. Calculated. It's not all over the place. It's not making assumption. This is based, specifically off of fact and. A lot of it, so the information you see comes from like the BBC in here, where they're being. I'm not saying the BBC is excellent source of information.
No, and I don't even look at the source. I look at the information.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And this article, when I saw this, you didn't even send this to me. I happened to, because I perused your site, and I happened to be on Strat Risks earlier today, and I was like, what? I had to read the article twice. The first line kills me. The first line of the article kills me. Israel's outgoing home front defense minister, I like that, home front defense minister.
Home front, oh God.
Says an attack on Iran would likely trigger a month-long conflict that would leave 500 Israelis dead. You're telling me that you really believe that?
That's calculating. That's definitely calculating.
That's dude, what are you going to use? If that's really what you believe, what kind of weapons are you going to use? Because I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think a war with Iran would last 30 days, and I don't think that only 500 Israelis would die. If that's not propaganda, I don't know what is.
Okay, look at it based upon strategy, and I'm going to try to explain this as best I can. Think about this kind of like a quarterback. Okay, you had the huddle, you know what play you're going to use, but you run the play folds, everything's in chaos, and the sort of strategy or grand strategy comes into play when you're able to do what you want, even though there's chaos all around you. There's so much going on, so many different variables, so many things happening, and yet you can sort of get further down the field. The way this is, they don't know the unknown unknowns. They don't know, just like the U.S. didn't know at the time, that Russian defense ministers are in Syria, advising them on how to wage war. That's why Assad hasn't fallen. That's the only reason he hasn't fallen. That and his inner circle of, his people. But they don't know who's backing Iran, who's backing Syria. And so, sure, they look like that you could knock them over with ease. But it seems that Russia, China, and others are very serious about stopping these wars. And so they're not only arming them, they're training them. I mean, they're giving them advice that, frankly, Syria wouldn't have lasted, I'd say, a month. The way it was shaping up. So I think it's foolish to say that, this many Israelis will die because of this war. Then why have the war? Even if you bomb them back to the Stone Age, you're only going to stop them, according to their own analysts, of producing a nuclear weapon by maybe a year or two. Okay, I mean it's ridiculous. But what this is, I'm going to tell you the focal point. The whole reason this is going on is for one reason. It's because arms sales have gone up higher than the heights of the Cold War. So Arab nations are paranoid. They're looking into nuclear weapons and they're looking into missile shields. So basically, it set off a domino effect of fear and paranoia that really the whole Middle East might go up when you start tinkering with Iran and Syria.
Who benefits?
Thank you.
Who benefits? Who makes the money off this? Because I bet you the same people are arming both sides, just like they do throughout history.
Right there on Stratus, I'm seeing that the Ukraine, Russia, they're arming other nations like Armenia, who is at war and has been at war. They're like I guess you could say the Hatfields and McCoys of Eurasia. They're always at war, and they have been at war, and they'll never stop being at war. And Armenia had annexed some of their territory. And so they might use this as a way to sort of, oh, this is distraction. Let me go in and take this territory back. And so other wars may start because of it. It's ridiculous. The amount of sort of flashpoint, level of issues that this may crop up is unimaginable. But these fools may think about doing it anyway. It doesn't matter because the military-industrial complex will make their money off of these arms sales.
How many times did they bring us to the brink of war with Russia? I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I'm old enough to remember the stupid hiding under your desk drills.
Yeah.
In case of the nuke going. Like, when you're a kid, you think, okay, I'll be safe. I didn't think that. I got in trouble because I used to ask the teacher, I said, look, I'm not a rocket scientist, but if a bomb goes off, how would us hiding under the desk make us any safer than if we were sitting
like the roof collapses and falls on the desk and kills you? Forget the nuclear weapons part of it.
I think the idea is that you're supposed to sit there and the desk will protect you from the falling stuff. But let's be honest, if they drop a nuke, right, and there's a blast, you're going to have a massive blast radius, and the concussion wave that comes out and pressure that follows the explosion, it'll vaporize anything. I mean,
think about the heat.
You think your school desk is going to protect you from that?
No, school's out, folks. School's out.
Yeah, exactly. So, see, all that stuff, a lot of that was to promote fear. It helped control people, and it made all this money for the arms defense industry. Remember, if you're scared, everybody's going to go out and buy guns, right?
Oh, do you remember when Rumsfeld told that big lie about how the Soviets had some invisible weapon warfare? I have a video, I have to find it. And that we need to arm up because they have new technology that we've never ever seen before, and the Soviet Union was really a crumbling ruin of filled with spare parts, but no real weapons. And so we built the Soviet Union up just by propaganda alone, so that the military-industrial complex can make more money.
Yeah, Soviet Russia wasn't. They had weapons and stuff. I won't put them down, but they didn't have, I would say, at least a quarter. It was at least a quarter, 25% less as impressive as our politicians sat and made it, sound, oh my God, Ruskies will be coming out of your closet. You
can't trust the Ruskies. the Red Scare.
Exactly. And, dude, the whole space race, when you look at it, you realize that the whole space race, that was all propaganda. There was no U.S. versus Soviet space race. That was what you saw. What went on behind the scenes was everybody was cooperating together to get it out there. Think about this. When you look into the space race, why was it that America, during the space race, you'd think if they were worried about getting up into outer space and into, on the moon and putting satellites and everything else up, right? You'd think that we'd be working on rocket technology and lift technology, engines and stuff. But no, the Soviets were doing that. We were working on navigational technology and stuff like that. So why were we working on one thing? The Soviets were focusing on something else. Well, if you look at it, you go, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would they? But when you look at it as they were working together, well, then it starts to make a little more sense. International Space Station, weaponizing space. One country ain't going to do that. You need a cooperation amongst countries to do something like that. Remember, the weaponization of space, ladies and gentlemen, is about, what do they call it? Full spectrum dominance. In fact,
right.
What's his name? Lyndon Johnson even talked about this back in the 50s. All right,
force protection.
Yep, force protection, force multipliers, they call them. We're going to break. We'll be right back. So, Mike, Iran. We've covered Israel's bloodlust, or the latest speak of their want to at least go to war with Iran. I find it interesting that there's this push to do it before the elections. And I wonder if, and Ray McGovern brought this up, I wonder if it's because, and I'm not trying to say I like Obama, I don't, they're all puppets, but he's not friendly with Netanyahu. Him and Netanyahu are like oil and water. And even though they would, if Israel between now and the elections attacked Iran, Obama would probably jump in with both feet to support him because of the election. McGovern brings up a good point of afterwards, because he's going to be a lame duck president for 4 years, would he be so quick to jump into it? So that's probably, he hypothesizes that this push from Iran is to do it before the election so that Obama, to save face and, oh my God, we have to support Israel to cover the Jewish base here in the United States and not have AIPAC up his ass and everything else, that he would jump in to support the war with both feet, as opposed to after the election, he might be like, well, now you guys really don't have anything over me. So right now they've kind of got him in a corner until the election. And this is what Ray McGovern, this is what he's put out there. I don't think the guy's a saint, meaning McGovern, but I take what he says very seriously, because he's not a stupid individual. The man knows what he's talking about. I know he's former CIA, and that's what I meant about not being a saint. Perhaps he could still be connected to them in one way or another. But from what I've seen, McGovern's usually right on point, and his latest, critique of the situation, from what I've looked into, is pretty accurate. I mean, that makes a little more sense. I'm not saying Obama. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's the only thing stopping World War III. No, I'm just saying that him and Netanyahu don't get along. Him and the Zionists do not get along, whereas the neocons and the Zionists are much closer. I mean, did you see the disgusting display? I know he went over to Israel, but did you see like Romney going over there? Oh
God, dude, he's at the Wailing Wall. He's like bobbing his head. Here's what bothers me. Is that I think Obama knows. I'm sure he's gotten some people, policymakers and people who know about this, and they can, kind of expect what kind of fallout they'll see. He knows that the moment this happens, speculators will come into play. The economy will tank. Here's the problem. All right, between the Straits of Hormuz, the Straits of Tehran, the Indian Ocean. If anything, and I mean anything, stops commerce, stops trade in those important, tradeways, look, our economy, you think it's bad now, okay? It goes to the toilet, all right? Speculators are going to do this anyway, okay, because they're trying to make a buck off the deal, all right? They're going to do what they can to make a buck off it. So immediately when this happens, they're going to make a buck off it. Iran is going to do some things. Iran has already passed a bill that says if Israel attacks, they're going to block the Straits of Hormuz. Most people don't know that the 3-day war began because Abdul Nasser blocked the Straits of Tehran in Egypt. That really began the 3-day war. There's a lot of other factors, but that was the main one because that impacts everyone's economy. And so the crap broke loose because of that. So many things are in play here that can really hurt us. I mean, hurt us badly. And so this guy's not going to get elected when the economy goes to crap, even worse than it is now, okay? People can somehow, I don't know how they can stand it now, but it'd be way worse than that if they did it before November. And so they do have him over a barrel. But I want to see how they react. And just like I told you during the break, I've gotten used to sort of analyzing these people to not see not see, what they're talking about or what they say, but what the people around them do, because they know as well. All these sort of various intelligence agencies, from India's Intelligence Bureau, the RAW, Pakistani ISI, the Saudi Arabia's, China's, all of them, to see what they do. And everyone's been putting up missile shields. India put up one. Israel put up one. The Middle East, they want to put up one. They want to make an Asian NATO. So it seems like they're going to go at it. It's just a matter of seeing how they do it and when they do it, and whether or not they have any respect for Obama or not.
Asian NATO. I mean, what countries are you going to get to partake in that? I guarantee you the United States will have to give them arms too, just like we do the regular NATO group.
Oh, they've already admitted that. Most people don't know that they have mutual defense treaties, mutual defense frameworks for a lot of these countries, okay? We're talking the Philippines, we're talking Japan, all these different nations.
Can you imagine that, like an Asian NATO, Mike? Like, what are they going to do? Call on? I'm not making fun of any of the Asian countries out there. I have a lot of listeners all over in the, around that whole Philippine plate area, that Ring of Fire, Japan, all over. I have a lot of listeners. I'm not making fun of anyone, but I'm just... I mean, how does anybody look at this and say, they're an alliance? What are you going to do, get guys in, like, boats with oars to row over and invade other islands and stuff? I mean, come on.
No. What you're going to do is you talk them into buying a bunch of arms, armor to the teeth, okay? And they're still not going to be nowhere near a rival for China.
Of course. Well, that's where I'm going with this. See, none of them have anything. So where are they going to go to get the arms from, Mike? The same people that are behind the scenes fomenting all this crap.
It's a mutual defense treaty, which means that attack on one is an attack on all, which means the United States would be sucked into a conflict.
Yeah, and I believe it was George Washington that talked about this. Right, one of the very first president of the U.S.
In entangling alliances.
Yeah, that's it. Not to get involved with tangling alliances. See, that's what he meant. He meant to not get involved in other people's stuff, because this is what happens. Because then you get, just like in a regular, you're walking down the street and you see two people, a guy and a girl, right? And the guy's yelling at his girlfriend, he's putting his finger in his face. Some guys like to be Mr. Tough Guy. Hey, man, don't talk to that lady like that. Like, they're going to come to her protection. Automatically, she's going to run to him, right? And then what happens? Usually the girlfriend or whoever ends up getting in the quote-unquote defender's face. And now it's 2 versus 1. And that's like a layman's example of what could happen. And we do that on a countrywide scale. We have friends that start fights and they call us up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Hey, America. Yeah, man, I just picked a fight with 4 pissed off countries over here. I need you to come down and back me. It's like getting a phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning from your idiot friend at the bar. Oh, man. Yeah, dude, there's like 5 guys outside with bats, and they all want to kick my ass. Can you come down here?
Can you come and help?
Yeah, I've gotten that phone call plenty of times, dude. Trust me. And that's exactly what happens with us. Israel's a perfect example. They're going to pick a fight. We'll say they pick a fight with Iran, and they start bombing them. They're automatically going to, we're going to get the 3 a.m. phone call, as Hillary used to call it, except it'll be, hey, man, that drunk phone call from the bar, Someone's going to kick my ass, Mike. Can you come over here and help me out in the Middle East? That's what we're going to get.
Well, do we have a mutual defense treaty? No. Oh, sorry.
Click. I mean, we shouldn't be getting involved in any of this, dude.
No, it's ridiculous. I'll tell you another thing that's really, really bad. That is the China Sea. Russia recently, I didn't even post it, but Russia recently jumped onto an island that the Japanese say they own, which also China says they own, and also the Philippines say they own. So you're going to talk about an Asian NATO when no one gets along, and everyone's at each other's throat over some real estate.
Yeah, say that again. I want you to repeat that again, the last part. Over what, Mike?
Real estate.
Over a piece of dirt.
Yes.
Over some dirt.
There could be a war. There could be a war over the Arctic. Okay, dude, Russia already has Arctic troops.
There's more than enough land on this friggin' planet for everybody, and yet we kill each other over a patch of dirt because supposedly that's where it's the chosen spot, or God commanded it that I annihilate other people. I want people to think about that for a second. I want people to think about the insanity of war for a second.
Manifest destiny.
Yeah, I want you to think about that for a second. War. We go in and we kill people for land or based on religious bullshit. One of the two, okay? Now, land obviously is not worth fighting over because there's plenty of it to go around. So that kills that, right? Now, when you look at religion, let me ask you a question. Just think about this, because we're going to be going to break. But I want you to think about this while we're at break. What God, who's all-loving and all-knowing and omnipotent and knows the secrets of the universe and created the universe, would then turn around and command a certain group of people on the planet that he made, and he created everyone, he would turn around and say, hey, you should ethnically cleanse these people because I don't know why I made them to begin with. Why can't God just snap his fingers and do it? Think about that. Because it's not really God doing it. It's man driven by ego. They're going to break. Apparently, I don't know, I haven't confirmed this yet, but I've seen 2 reports now that the police are raiding in through the side door of the Ecuadorian embassy over in the UK, going after Assange. And if they really did enter the Ecuadorian embassy, this is really going to cause a problem. And interesting, I don't see one story about it in the lamestream media. Not one. Of course, I also don't see any stories about the fact that Obama is challenging the judge's ruling on the NDAA, the provision where it says that she said that it's unconstitutional for Americans to get locked up indefinitely. And, no trial, no judge, no jury, just not even any evidence that you did anything wrong. Just, we think you're a terrorist. Goodbye.
America talks a good game about democracy. Democracy, we're going in and invading for democracy. But they treat other nations like bitches. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, they have no respect for anyone else unless you have a nuclear weapon. Every nation needs to have a nuclear weapon. I mean, honestly, that's the only way you're going to get any respect. I mean, like, look at Libya, okay? We're going in for democracy. We have to get rid of Gaddafi. And then, how great is that democracy now? Yeah, Libya is a hellhole.
How about the pictures of Gaddafi in 2009 shaking hands with Obama?
You know what? Actually, Libya was on its way to being a first world nation in the same vein that Iraq was on its way to being a first world. Oh, don't worry. We took care of that right quick. We put them right back to third world status right quick. I mean, it's like we're on the way up. Everything's going great. Sure that both leaders were horrible, but the nations were actually near first world status. Let's fix that. We can't let that happen. Can't let a bunch of Arabs come in and try to, be in the G20.
Before the first Gulf War, Iraq was actually like the number one Middle Eastern country for medicine and stuff. Like other countries, other people, if they needed stuff done, they would go to Iraq because of the doctors. And this is not a lie. You can look it up. First heart transplant in the Middle East and Iraq. But hey, they're a bunch of backwards a-holes and tents who support Al-Qaeda, so we should just invade them because, hey, we're America. We're superior. I drive an SUV. And that's the arrogance people have. And it's disgusting. It really is. It's absolutely disgusting.
It's ignorance and hubris. Somehow that coalesces together and makes something like really horrible. It's like you could have McCain say, I've heard that Al-Qaeda is training in Iran. And people go, oh my God, that's horrible. We need to stop Iran. No, they'd butcher each other. It would never happen. Oh, well. And it really doesn't matter because it's all manufactured, consent, pre-propaganda settings. And you can just tell people anything.
Sides with the Iran-Iraq war, dude.
Dude, we did. We armed both sides. And it's funny, like people in the chat room talking about the IMF. I mean, the IMF is like a loan shark that has access to your bank book. Looks like you need a loan, buddy. Come on to see me. Well, you can't pay it back. Well, we own you now. We own your country. We'll privatize everything. We'll treat you like Greece. I mean, the way that the United States and Europe treat other nations is absolutely deplorable.
Look at John Perkins. He was sent in. What was it by the? I think it was the IMF. He ended up being, controlled by, I guess you could say, when he was an economic hitman, and he used to go in. He would, make all these deals with these presidents, and then obviously they would not be able to pay back the loan. So they would say, okay, look, we'll take your oil, your water, whatever, and we'll control it, and then that'll be payment. And then they destroy, they rape the country for whatever natural resources they can get, and the people are the ones that end up getting screwed. And, he really tells it right. It's not capitalism. It's this crony capitalism. It's this real true capitalism doesn't cause this. It's this mutant form of it. And blaming capitalism is a red herring. When you see young people holding signs up, capitalism doesn't work, nah, 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 nah. Your people have no idea what you're talking about, and you're being led around by the nose, and you're ignorant. And the people that go and defend the current form of capitalism that we have under the guise of it being capitalism. That's the same thing too. That's the other side of the coin.
The current form we have is socialism for the rich and free market for the poor.
Yeah, here, everything for them and nothing for the rest of us. What's ours is theirs, and what's theirs is theirs. That's the way these douches look at it.
Speaking of which, I've interviewed John Perkins on a couple occasions, and also another guy, Steve. What was his name? He wrote another great book in the same vein that Perkins did, and Perkins did a forward for him. A great book called A Game as Old as Empire, where he finds other economic hitmen, and they all write certain parts of his book. And the way they do it is the 3 Bs. Blackmail, bribery, or bullets. You get one of the 3. And if the nation doesn't fall for whatever you're trying to foist upon them, then they'll just bomb you and take it over. Or like the movie The Tailor of Panama. Check that out.
You ever see The Panama Deception?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I've seen that recently on Netflix.
Another good movie people should go watch. Perfect example. What we're doing now in the Middle East, we did in South America back in the 80s and in the 70s. Late 70s leading into the 80s. What do you think the invasion of Panama was about? You want to see some interesting or read some interesting behind-the-scenes stuff about the invasion of Panama? You should read Kathy O'Brien's book. Again, it dovetails in with the mind control stuff. Read her book, The Transformation of America. They told him, you're gonna be the scapegoat. You're gonna be the fall guy, dude. We're gonna come in. Bush and them, he dealt with him for years behind the scenes, dealing drugs and running drugs. They used Panama to run drugs through into the United States.
And it was well known.
And this dovetails again into other things like, what, Mike? What's that? F, Fast and Furious? Ooh, how does this, isn't it amazing it all dovetails? Because guess what? Mexico is above where? Where's Mexico above? Central America. So if the drugs were coming up through Panama, they had to eventually either go through the Gulf of Mexico or through Mexico itself.
And that's where Southcom comes into play. Look at what happened in El Salvador, okay? You had a bunch of farmers, got pissed off, armed themselves up. Of course, they're on the socialist side of things. Armed themselves up and took over certain parts of El Salvador from this hardcore junta that the U.S. funded. They lost the battle. And these farmers took over. The U.S. government went in and gave these hardcore juntas, murderers, death squads, gave them tanks to take the country back over again, just so we can cut a deal and work, and sell weapons to Iran, and sell cocaine. There's a book. I'm trying to remember the name of it here. It's called Killing Hope.
The CIA runs drugs. Are you trying to tell me the CIA run? Of course, I'm being facetious.
That's what a recent Mexican official said, and he's soon to be dead.
You saw that too, right? I saw that, and I'm like, is this guy high up? And he's like some lower-ranking, local official. I'm like, I give it 30 days, and they're going to find him hanging from a bridge, eviscerated. If you want to analyze all the things the U.S. has done over a period of maybe 100 years or so, read the book Killing Hope by William Bloom. He lays it all out. What's it called? Killing Hope?
Killing Hope.
By William Bloom. I'm writing that down so I can look up the book myself.
The funny thing is, all this information we talk about, they're all in books, and somehow people don't seem to see them. And lots of conspiracy theory. That cannot possibly be true. It couldn't possibly be true in Operation Gladio that they blew up buses with children on them.
And they did. You can go look it up. And where did Gladio come from? Gladio came. It's known as the NATO Stay Behind Network.
NATO Stay Behind Armies. I interviewed the guy who wrote the seminal book on it. Glasser, I think what his last name is.
And they did terror attacks, blamed it on other people,
Blamed it on the Reds because it was a big, Cold War deal.
Red Scare. They're coming to get you.
And that was worse is they worked with a bunch of low-level Freemasons to do everything in Europe.
The P2 Lodge.
That's right. You remember, yeah.
Oh, yes. My brain is like sometimes it's scary, the amount of information stocked away in the warehouse of the back of my brain.
I'm like the damn Bing commercial, dude. You mentioned a subject. I'm just like rattling off, data.
It's fun. It's because I read. Honestly, it's because I read. And not, yes, I read internet articles. But honestly, I would say, and Mike, I'm sure he'll attest to this too, at least I would say 75 to 80% of my research is done reading books. Some of books that are close to 100 years old sometimes. If you're researching stuff that is historical, or if you're looking up stuff like their own writings, or Manly P. Hall, stuff like that. Even the older Skull and Bones type stuff when you start to look into secret societies. But I cover a vast array of books, stuff that was just published and stuff that's been out for forever. You have to read. Reading is the best way to investigate anything. You'd be surprised what you'd learn when you read a book. Seriously. Ask Mike, he'll tell you. You read a book and all of a sudden you're like, how come I never heard of that?
And then you make the connections to other things.
And you realize how shady the mainstream media is. They're all worried about, I don't see anything about Assange. I don't see anything about the NDAA with Obama. None of that right now. But, I see them talking about the latest pop stars' underwear color or who's banging who. They talk about nonsensical crap to keep you distracted from what's really going on. So you should just cut out the mainstream media altogether. They're as useful as a dirty diaper. Right, that's how useful they are. All right, ladies and gentlemen, hour 1 is up. Hour number 2 coming up. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Popeye from federaljack.com. It is August 15th, 2012. I want to thank Jimmy X over at Ryan Talk Radio for hosting the broadcast and sending it out over his airwaves and his stream. Big thanks to Tim for all the work he's been doing behind the scenes on the website. Everybody, please be patient. Tim's almost done, but the site's about, I'd say, 95% operational, and it looks phenomenal. And we are hanging out today with Mike Vail. And Mike and I have covered Israel versus Iran pretty in-depth, I think, in the first hour. And I want to move on and cover a few other things. While we're over in that region, Mike, we might as well cover Syria for a second and go over the debacle that's going on there. Now, we covered Syria a bit, but there's still things like the fact that Libyan fighters are now pouring.
Yes, oh God.
And who are the Libyan rebels? These guys are supposedly they were just Libyans that wanted to be free of Muammar Gaddafi. And then you find out it's Al-Qaeda. And then now they're pouring over into help the rebels in Syria. But hey, that's a good thing. We help those Libyan rebels, but they're Al-Qaeda. But we're at war with them in Afghanistan because they did 9/11 with the Taliban. But wait, the Taliban didn't help us in the official version of things. Or helped Al-Qaeda in the official version of things. They actually offered to give bin Laden over, and we said, F you, we don't need to give you evidence, we're just going to bomb the hell out of your country.
It's so bad because, regardless of, I don't think Assad's a wonderful guy. I wouldn't like to have, a beer with him, anything like that. He's a thug. And a lot of those people in the Arab nations, those countries, they're all thugs. And that's really the only way you can keep those people in line a lot of times is through thuggery, okay? And I think the thuggery has gone way too far. But recently, a Turkish prime minister said that the refugee zone that Turkey has on Syrian soil, which they basically occupied their soil, he said is a terrorist operation, where they plan and plot things to go out and do. And recently as today, they had an explosion in one of the main cities. They're saying that Damascus is going to be the big flashpoint area to sort of finish this battle. And also a Russian, defense minister, I forget, but he said that Assad is ready to cut a deal. He's ready to go, get the hell out, because obviously he wants to live. because instead of using bullets, now they're using bombs. I mean, whether it's, Al-Qaeda style bombs or drone type bombs, he's ready to go. But they're not going to cut a deal. Do you remember in Vietnam, right when the war was going to end, Nixon was trying to be elected, and he told those people, keep the war going until I get in, and we'll have a peace treaty set up. The peace treaty was already written, ready to be signed, but he extended it just so they can get into office and make it look like he ended the war. This is about the same thing going on. They want a big finish. They want the sort of blitzkrieg effect of we go in, we blow the hell out of everything, and then we get rid of this guy, and we're the heroes. Same thing.
Like Libya. I mean, it's kind of the same way they did Libya. And for those of you that don't know how they got Gaddafi, they didn't nail him in one of his hideouts. No. He was driving in his car, and everybody said he was fleeing the city. None. When you actually go investigate it, it's very interesting, but Hillary Clinton happened to be in the area at the time of his death, and there's evidence that shows that he was brokering a deal to surrender to NATO. Not to the rebels, but to NATO, because he knew he stood a better chance, I guess, if you have to choose, you choose NATO over the savages.
Instead of a mob.
Yeah.
Instead of a mob, yeah.
Because look what happened, and he knew what was going to happen to him. So they brokered, there's enough evidence to show that they brokered a deal with him, and lured him out into the desert and then nailed him. What they did was they hit his car and they admit this, they hit his car with a drone strike, and then they called in the scumbag rebel rat dirtbags to finish him off. And I don't care what you think of Gaddafi, okay? He might not have been the world's greatest individual, but Libya was in much better shape than it was before we invaded, okay? And monetarily, everything, education, women's rights, everything.
It's now a hellhole.
It's like a third world status again. I mean, they were going to get high speed rail systems. Gaddafi invested his money into that country, okay, and they were on the way up to first world nation status, like Mike and I were talking about in the first hour, and we put them right back into the Stone Age. Go look at pictures of the cities back when Gaddafi was in charge, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and look at the pictures of the cities today.
Oh, look. In Gaddafi's, regime, electricity free, water free. Okay, we're about nearing first world status. Okay, they had stuff that we don't even have in America. Okay, they had going on in Libya. Okay, now these Libyan, they call them Libyan fighters, Libyan rebels, the Libyan rebels of the Republic, are now. I thought Libya was supposed to be a great place after they killed Gaddafi. But obviously not. It's a hellhole now. And they were never really kind of like, the usual people hanging around. Okay, we'll fight Gaddafi. We'll do that. No, they're mercenaries. They're not just regular folks. They're thugs. They're run-a-thugs.
Big-time thugs. And believe me, they wouldn't think twice if the government said, hey, we need you to come over to America and start running around the streets and shooting people up over in America. Don't think that they wouldn't just come over here. And it amazes me, people are so ignorant of the truth, Mike. They think that if someone came here, well, they would have to obey our laws, because if not, my local police would stand up to them. These guys would eat your local police officers for breakfast. Okay,
and they were NATO trained. NATO trained thugs.
Merciless things to these guys. I mean, these are the same people that are hanging people upside down by their feet and sawing their heads off in a public square in front of hundreds and hundreds of screaming, cheering idiots. Okay, sawing a live human's head off. But that's okay. That's who we support, right? That's who you were taught to be afraid of 10 years ago, and now that's who we're supporting. We're sending our guys and our women over to different countries like Afghanistan to get blown up by roadside bombs. Every day you hear, soldiers getting killed. The other day, 3 Marines got lured into, having lunch with one of the local police commanders. And while they were sitting there eating, the Afghan police stood up and, I guess they were loyal to the Taliban, whatever you want to call it. Maybe they're just tired of people being in their country for 10 friggin' years. And they murdered these 3 Marines. Now, I'm not saying I'm not justifying what he did to the Marines. I'm not trying to justify the Marines' existence being in Afghanistan. What I'm telling you is if they weren't there to begin with, that never would have happened, and those 3 men would never have died the way they did. Okay? And they died needlessly. They were murdered. Not by the Afghan police, though. They were murdered by the scumbags that sent them over there to begin with.
Amen. Amen. I mean, this is really how bad it is when you have the National Guard. The National Guard was sent to Iraq. The National Guard is supposed to be there to protect the U.S. in times of crisis. I mean, that's how little they really give a rat's ass about us. They send the National Guard out, okay? And this is really, how bad it is. So many soldiers have been sacrificed on the altar to the military-industrial complex, okay? We can list it off, okay? We can list off Vietnam. I mean, Iraq now, maybe Syria now, Libya. I mean, it's so sad that people have to die so that some president can smile and say, we took over this nation and you should be proud we took it over. At one point in time, a president was more focused about what's going on in their country. But you can have bridges crumbling to dust in America, but they're focused on something else. It's like a magician's trick. Redirect something. Pay no attention to the hellhole you're living in. The economy is crumbling around you, on top of your heads. I mean, potholes everywhere.
They don't want you to pay attention to any of that. They want you to watch Dancing with the Stars and think everything is okay. And don't worry, the economy's not in shambles. Please keep going, spend money on useless shit that you
Invest
don't need
in
with
the
money
stock
that
market.
you don't have. Mike, we're going to get cut off by the break. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. More with Mike Vail when we come back.
Americans that the U.S. is getting closer each day to getting militarily involved in Syria. But what you may not know is that a new report says we already are. So who exactly is the U.S. supporting? Ben has the reality check you won't see anywhere else.
The headline from Reuters yesterday, President Barack Obama has signed a secret order authorizing U.S. support for rebels seeking to dispose Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and his government. A U.S. government source acknowledged that under provisions of the presidential finding, the United States is collaborating with a secret command center operated by Turkey and its allies. Last week, Reuters reported that along with Saudi Arabia and Qatar, Turkey had established a secret base near the Syrian border to help direct vital military and communication support to Assad's opponents. Separately from the president's secret order, the Obama administration has stated publicly that it is providing some backing for Assad's opponents. The State Department said on Wednesday the U.S. government had set aside a total of $25 million for non-lethal assistance to Syrian opposition. A U.S. official said that was mostly for communications equipment, including encrypted radios. Now, Republicans like Senators John McCain and Lindsey Graham, they insist the president is taking too long to help the rebels overthrow Assad. But the big question here that no one is asking, who are these rebels that the U.S. is supporting? Well, buried at the bottom of that Reuters article, quote, recent news reports from the region have suggested that the influence and numbers of Islamist militants, some of them connected to al-Qaeda or its affiliates, have been growing among Assad's opponents. U.S. and European officials say that so far, intelligence agencies do not believe the militants' role in the anti-Assad opposition is dominant. Really? They don't believe that the militant role is dominant? It's kind of interesting because we've been here before. As recently as last year. In 2011, the U.S. provided large amounts of money and military support to help overthrow Muammar Gaddafi. They were providing that support to opposition forces in Libya. At the time, an Italian newspaper interviewed Abdel Hakim al-Hasidi, the Libyan rebel leader. And he told that Italian newspaper that jihadists who fought against allied troops in Iraq, against U.S. troops, were on the front lines of the battle against Gaddafi's regime. Mr. al-Hasidi admitted he had earlier fought against the foreign invasion in Afghanistan before being captured in 2002 in Pakistan. He was later handed over to the U.S. and then held in Libya before being released in 2008. Mr. al-Hasidi insisted his fighters, quote, are patriots and good Muslims, not terrorists, but added that the, quote, members of al-Qaeda are also good Muslims and are fighting against the invader, end quote. So what you need to know, late last year when Senator John McCain co-wrote the National Defense Authorization Act and President Obama signed it into law, they crafted a law that gave the president the authority to use all necessary and appropriate force during the current armed conflict with Al-Qaeda and the Taliban and associated forces, including the power to indefinitely detain anyone caught supporting Al-Qaeda, which in this case is the president and members of Congress. To be clear, we're spending over $1 trillion and, more importantly, spilling the blood of thousands of American lives in Iraq and Afghanistan. Then spending more American money and military power to, in some cases, help the same fighters overthrow another government. Is Al-Qaeda the enemy or aren't they? And that is reality check.
Now, tell me that doesn't dovetail right into what Mike and I have been talking about, and that is a mainstream news report. Of course, you won't see it on Fox News. It's a Fox affiliate. The guy's name is Ben Swan. Apparently, I'm told he's from Massachusetts, I think. That's what I was told, because I wasn't sure where he was from. I had mentioned on there last week that I wasn't sure where he was from, and one of the listeners messaged me and said that he was from Massachusetts. So I haven't checked into it. I should. I just have been so slammed I haven't been able to. But there you go. That's a mainstream media news report from a mainstream media outlet, Fox. Now, it's not the cable Fox News, but it's still a Fox affiliate. And you have this one lone news guy that's willing to tell you the same thing that Mike and I just did. Now, there's no conspiracy theory there. This is the truth. This is the reality of the situation. And Mike, did you hear the same people's names come up? You ever notice this? Levine and the other two morons. I'm surprised Lindsey Graham's name didn't come up, but the two of the biggest war hawks, Lieberman and John McCain.
Oh, God.
And the same crap that they're spewing.
The usual suspects.
Oh, dude. These guys, I swear to God, they're the same dicks that are out there on the Sunday morning shows last year with Libya. And now they're out there with Syria. And then while they're pushing Syria, and they're also like, we should also hit Iran. Well, is there anybody else you guys want to blow off the map while you're...
It's almost like we're watching like a rerun of The Sopranos, okay? And you're talking about who we're going to whack this week. Okay, Syria, Iran, possibly Somalia, possibly who knows who's next. When does war end? Someone asked me once before, he said, when do you think the economy will tank? And I said, I don't think it will. I think it will reach some of the lowest lows we've ever seen, and then it will stay there. And then it will basically stabilize to the point of the lowest lows. And so we never, ever get used to not talking about war. And I think this is kind of a bit of a parlor trick on the part of those people because, on its face, you look at it and you think, these guys are war hawks. They've never fought a battle in their lives, okay? And, of course, McCain was a loudmouth even when he was being held. But, these guys aren't fighting any war. Their relatives, their families aren't fighting any war. And they're so easily led to tell other people how to die and how to live. We can attack these guys over here. We can attack these guys over here. And, to me, it's crazy. And so the language of war and the war, digesting information about war is never far from the lips of the media. So we've almost gotten used to it. It's like a knee-jerk reaction, like almost like a pattern that we're so used to that we really don't care much about.
We've been desensitized. In video games, you see it on TV, 10 years of constant war. See, in Vietnam, it was quite the different situation. You didn't see as much footage, and back then, the footage and reality of war still shocked people because they didn't have video games desensitizing them. They didn't have violent movies like we do now desensitizing them. If a movie came out that was uber violent back in the day, look at The Exorcist, dude. Freaked people out, sent them to the hospital. People were fainting, passing out in the movie theater. I mean, can you imagine if you took Saw and took that movie back 30 years ago and played that in the movie theater? Dude, people, you would probably be arrested for indecency and strung up in the town square because people still had some sense of morals back in the day. But now, people are so desensitized by horror movie after horror movie. There's a reason they put that crap out every year constantly. And if you notice, the abundance of horror movies where they come out in just a ton of them, in the past, there were horror movies out before 2000, but in the past 12 years, since I would say even before, a little bit before 9/11, the ramping up, the late 90s into the 2000s, the ramping up of the violence in the TV shows and in the movies and stuff. What do you think that's for? That's to desensitize us so that when you see real images that are inevitably going to come out, because they know this, of dead babies because of our bombs, you're not shocked by that anymore. Because, hey, you just watched a movie last night where some dude chopped off another dude's toe with a pair of, tin snips or whatever, or carved out his eyeball with a spoon. I mean, seeing something that graphic, that desensitizes you to seeing the reality of stuff.
There was a study done in Berkeley where they said that, every violent act that we see since, beginning when we were a child, it kills a piece of us every time. And to the point we don't care. We'll kill or be killed and it won't even matter anymore.
And look at society today. You can see it just in our morals and the things that you see on TV. And again, how desensitized people are to the suffering of others anywhere else in the world. All right, we're going to go to break. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. We're back in 3 minutes. All right, Mikey, we got a half hour left. So I want to get into a few other things with you, but it all dovetails one into the other. You heard him talk about the NDAA, the last clip I played. And I'm actually going to play another clip from the same guy because the only mainstream news reporter that's willing to talk about it. And the reason I play the mainstream news reports is to show the listeners who are kind of on the fence, that are still kind of listening to the mainstream, that, look, we're not nuts in making this up, because here you go. You have someone that is in the mainstream who is actually telling you the same thing we are and giving you the same information. So it's not just some conspiracy tart, like they like to call us, in his basement with some tinfoil hat on his head. This is the reality of the situation. And it's about the Indefinite Detention Clause. And I think Ben did a good job, actually, in that clip that I played previously, where he said, in this case, the people that would fall under that category and need to be detained is Congress itself and the very presidency, or the person in the presidency, and his whole administration. Can't talk tonight. His Obama and his whole administration and everybody in Congress. So the entire Senate, every congressman and woman, all their assistants, everybody. All these people would be held as terrorists under this law, but you don't see them getting in trouble for backing Al-Qaeda. No, that's okay. That's different. See, the law doesn't apply to them. Now, I bring up the NDAA because this judge, and I can't remember her name, female judge, you'll hear it mentioned in the clip I'm about to play, she ruled that it was unconstitutional, the Indefinite Detention Clause that they had in there. And the Obama administration's trying to, the same Obama administration that said, no, I won't be for that. I won't allow the indefinite detention of American citizens because that would violate, our basic principles, blah, 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 blah. This is the same guy that's now fighting the judge who said it's unconstitutional to indefinitely detain Americans. Yeah, well, apparently the same guy that's your savior is now saying the exact opposite. Check this out. I know this will blow your mind, Mike. Check this out.
Well, the National Defense Authorization Act may be the most significant piece of legislation in the country when it comes to civil rights, and yet it is rarely even mentioned by the national media, which is why you have probably not heard that the Obama administration may be in violation of a federal court injunction that blocks the administration from locking up U.S. citizens without trial. In our Commitment to Balance News, Ben has the reality check you won't see anywhere else.
The National Defense Authorization Act, something we've talked about for months here on Reality Check. Section 1021 of that bill gives the president the power to arrest and to hold even U.S. citizens who are accused of terrorism or aiding terror groups. And to be clear, this law does not require that the government prove you are working with terrorists. It does not require that you're given a trial and allows you to be held by the government until the end of our war with Al-Qaeda, Taliban, or so-called associated forces, even though it's not really clear who those associated forces might be. Yes, it's called the Indefinite Detention Clause, and it means that you can be held by the feds in prison without one shred of proof that you've done anything wrong until the end of our endless war on terror. The National Defense Authorization Act was drafted by Democrat Senator Carl Levin and Republican Senator John McCain. And the bill not only passed Congress easily, but it went to the desk of President Obama, who signed it into law on New Year's Eve 2011, though the president claimed he had reservations. But shortly after signing the NDAA, the White House released this statement from the president. Quote, I want to clarify that my administration will not authorize the indefinite military detention without trial of American citizens. Indeed, I believe that doing so would break with our most important traditions and values as a nation. The only problem, as we've told you here, Senator Carl Levin stood on the Senate floor and explained that it was, in fact, the Obama administration who in the first place specifically asked for that indefinite detention power. So which one is it? Does the president want this power or not? Well, consider this. Early this year, a group of journalists and activists sued the government. The claim, the Indefinite Detention Clause violates the Due Process Clause of the Constitution. Judge Catherine Forrest agreed with those journalists, issuing an 8-page memorandum in which she said that indefinite detention cannot be used on any of America's own citizens, saying, quote, in the face of what could be indeterminate military detention, due process requires more. Well, instead of abiding by the injunction, the White House has appealed it instead. Tangerine Bolin is an activist who voted for President Obama in 2008. She's also one of the plaintiffs suing the government over this issue and writes about the latest hearing on this issue, saying, quote, Obama's attorneys refused to assure the court in the latest hearing, when questioned, that the NDAA's provision, one that permits reporters and others who have not committed crimes to be detained without trial, has not been applied by the U.S. government anywhere in the world after Judge Forrest's injunction. In other words, they were saying to a U.S. judge that they could not or would not state whether Obama's government had complied with the legal injunction that she had laid down before them. To this, Judge Forrest responded that if the provision has indeed been applied, the United States government itself will be held in contempt of court. So what you need to know is that this issue is not political, it's an issue of law. The NDAA Indefinite Detention Clause, according to a U.S. federal judge, violates the rule of law in the U.S. Constitution. It violates freedom of speech, freedom of press, and the right to due process. But rather than abiding by that, not only is the White House fighting it, the government's own lawyers either can't or won't say whether they've been abiding by a federal order to stop indefinite detention around the world. We have 3 separate but equal branches of government for a reason. But both parties right now, they are fighting to grow the power of that executive branch to overpower the other 2. Americans had better wake up from this left-right paradigm, because if they don't, soon we won't be electing a chief executive. We'll be choosing one person to rule us all. And that is Reality Check.
You see why I say I hope this guy has someone to start his car, Mike?
Oh, my God, man. He's breaking way down too much information for for most people.
This guy deserves a Pulitzer Prize for what he's doing, for real. I mean, you know, I know everybody's like, well, does he write articles? No. If he had to write down what he just said in an article, it'd be an 18-page expose. I mean, He just put a ton of information in that little, 4.5, 5 minute video clip.
I mean, he basically hit us all over the head with a lot of good information. You know what? The funny thing about this in the Obama administration, Stalin would give you a show trial, a meaningless show trial, before he tossed you in the gulags forever, okay? I mean, at least he had the decency to give you a show trial. Obama? No. Everyone goes to the gulags, okay? I mean, this is ridiculous. How can anyone be an American? How can anyone be a human being and to say that with no trial, with no thought, with no information, with no facts, indefinitely toss someone in a hole because you think that they're a threat? Well, to the government, and to a lot of these sort of Neolithic old men.
Mike. They don't even have to think it as in they have evidence to back it up.
No,
they just have to say it. It could be a baseless claim.
Everyone is a threat to these Neolithic old men that can't trust their own populace. That's the problem. That's why bills like these exist. And also, just like we were saying before, with the sort of war meme and the war mentality being thrust upon us every day, we get to the point where everything else is, like I said before on the show, is broken down into this: friend, enemy, good, bad, normal, abnormal. Well, that's not normal. Oh, well, he's not a friend of mine, and we're getting to the point where we're almost to a point where we have almost like a war psychosis where everyone around us could be an enemy. And now the government is scared. They're buying up ammunition. They're concerned about their own people. So legislations like these exist. We're going into some dangerous times.
Very dangerous times. And again, people have been desensitized to violence, so it's okay now. Again, 30 years ago, more people would have been outraged by the things that are going on.
They would have flipped out. It would have been torches and pitchforks, okay?
And that's not that long ago. People say, oh, that was a long time ago. No, it's not. It's not that long ago that people would have actually gotten irritated by 10 years of warfare that you know about. Vietnam was 20-something years long, but the American public only knew about it for a shorter period of time. That's why they always say the Afghan war has lasted longer than the Vietnam War. That's actually not true. But they have to keep up the official BS version of their history, so they have to. That's why you see the news media playing a big deal out of it and everything else. There's so many things going on behind the scenes that you're not supposed to know, because smarter, better people can do it for us. And of course, I'm being facetious when I say that. We're going to break. We'll be right back. Mikey, we are back. Final segment. And like I normally do, I want to, as I start the final segment, I want to give a big shout out to all my listeners and tell you again that you are all an integral part of this fight for freedom. And I'm not talking about, my Constitution, or it goes way beyond that. This is not about government. This is about really being free and, the evolution.
Life and limb.
Yes, the evolution of our species. Either we evolve, beyond this, or we're going to head back into the dark ages hundreds of years ago. And you, ladies and gentlemen, are an integral part in this whole thing. And I would be remiss if I didn't remind you of that. It's not just Mike or, Joe, Tim, Ken, Jimmy X, myself, and other people. It's not just us. And all there's thousands and thousands of people I didn't name. But it's not just us. It's the people that tune in. You guys help bring information, but you also, by listening to us, and you go, and if you, most of you do, some people just run with it, but most people actually go do their own research, because at least my listeners, because I encourage them to. And you guys are an integral part of this fight, because if it were not for you, Mike and I'd be speaking to the wall. And the wall's not going to help me out, you know what I'm saying? I could talk to the wall all day long. So I always like to give a shout out to the listeners, and, we love you guys. That's why we do this. We may seem grumpy sometimes, but, we come back and do this. I know I do it. Everybody here at this network does it for free. And I know Mike does it for free. He doesn't get paid. He comes on my show all the time, gives me free, at least 2 hours of his free time. So, we do it because we actually do love humanity, and we don't want humanity to go down the road it's going. Because, Mike, what I see with society, I see things on TV like this, what is it called, Toddlers and Tiaras on TLC. First of all, those parents, by the way, you're all shitty parents. Every one of you is a horrible parent. Every single one of you that involved in that type of crap is a horrible parent. Even if you're not on that show, if you do that kind of pageantry crap with your kid, you're disgusting. I don't care what your excuse is. That's gross. You shouldn't dress your 5-year-old daughter up like a whore.
And then the child becomes like vain, and honestly, you just ruin the child that way.
Well, that's like a physical representation of our society, bro. That shows you how down the crapper we've gone as a society. Because if you did that stuff 40, 50 years ago, you'd have dads breaking your arms for dressing your daughter like that. You know what I'm saying? And nowadays, you got fathers and stuff. They dress their daughter up like that at 5, and then they're surprised when they're 16 and pregnant. Really?
Yeah. Look, I think the problem is that Americans, they've gotten to the point now where we've seen everything. Okay. And so we've become this voyeuristic society, and everything's based around pageantry. And then we look at other people in other shows like Jersey Shore and laugh at them because we're better than them. We've really become arrogant little slaves that we don't know we're slaves, We don't respect the fact that we're slaves, but we're slaves, but somehow some other slave that has it worse than us, we're better than them.
Yeah, none of them are better than any of us. We just allow them to dominate us, dude.
Look, it's like everyone puts their pants on one leg at a time. Everyone eats, sleeps, craps. What makes me better than you? What makes you better than me? We're all human beings, and somehow we have this false hierarchy that, he's the president of the United States. He's some guy that conned you into voting for him.
I'm going to read you a little quote. All right, and this comes from V for Vendetta, but I want to read this to you because this is one of the monologues, and I want you to hear this for a second. Maybe this will sink in, and this will help people understand how they use fear and stuff to control you, okay? Because they literally pump out fear 24/7. I've said this time and time again. They control us by scaring the crap out of us, and this really puts it into perspective. I'll read this for you. Here we go. This is one of the lines from V. This is when he was broadcasting over the television, and I'm not going to read you the whole thing, but this is like the crux of it. War, terror, disease. There were a myriad of problems which conspired to corrupt your reason and rob you of your common sense. Fear got the best of you, and in your panic, you turned to the now High Chancellor, Barack Obama. See, I inserted his name. He promised you order. He promised you peace. And all he demanded in return was your silent, obedient consent. And that's exactly what we're giving them. When we go, please save me, please, only the president can save us. See, they have everybody believing this myth that the president is this superhero that comes in with a cape, and he's the guy that fixes everything. I mean, I've literally seen people in public go, the president, he'll fix everything. I know someone that said to me, I overheard conversation a few weeks ago where they said, I can't wait to vote for Obama again because him and Hillary are going to fix everything. And it's like, there is no Superman. It's a myth, okay? The answer to all of the problems lies within us, okay? I say it all the time, evolution. We need to evolve and make them irrelevant. It's that simple. It is literally that simple.
There's a bit of speech, but one of the important quotes is like, if it wasn't for poor people who make the food, the rich would have to eat cash. Think about that, okay? It's like you have farmers out there sweating out there in the hot-ass sun, working to make food so other people can eat it. Now, what happens if they don't make the food that, other people eat? You think about that. You think about the hierarchy you think about the elite. Oh, they have all this money. Oh, they have this prestige and influence. Well, you know what? We're the real gears that run society, okay? They just take the credit for it.
Well, like David Icke has talked about, he shows that image where they're all at the top of the pyramid. And the reality of the situation is because he's talked about this where he had witnessed this at I guess it was like their version of a Broadway show or whatever years before, where there was a pyramid. The people on the stage had done a human pyramid, and one of the guys in the bottom, I guess, got sick or whatever in the middle of it and had to run off, and just that one person leaving in the corner, the whole pyramid toppled. Well, that's the same premise. These douchebags are riding on everybody else's backs, and they use fear to keep everyone in line. It's like the high school bully. I'll kick your ass. I did in high school? I beat the shit out of the bullies. Okay? You can ask anybody that knows me in real life that went to high school with me, and some of them listen, and they know who you are. I got in trouble all the time because I was picked on. Except the difference between me and other people were my mother told me, you don't worry about the principal, you only got to worry about me, and I want you to defend yourself. Awesome.
Well, see, I mean, like you can take that beating one time, and you think, well, that's really not that big a deal. Oh, what else can you do to me? It's like nothing. Well, then you're irrelevant.
Yeah, see, once you stand up to these bullies, dude, and that's where I was going with this, was the fact that if you stand up to these bullies, 9 times out of 10, they back down. It's all about intimidation. They need to keep you in fear. Think about it. If government or some of these mainstream religions, any of them, okay, if they really were the answer to everything, and they were these supermen, and that was the answer, it was they were the meaning of everything, then why do they need to use fear and intimidation to get you to buy into their BS? Why aren't we living in a utopia if that's correct? Right? It's because it's all crap. And again, it's because they have an agenda, and they use fear and ignorance to control people. So what I like to do once in a while is recite the litany against fear. And really quick, I'm going to recite it again for everybody, and then I'm going to give Mike his final thoughts before we punch out for the evening. So everybody get ready, stand up, turn your speakers up real loud, and recite it with me. Believe it or not, if you recite it, and if you've done it, it makes you, gives you a little inner strength. Here we go. The litany against fear. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. That's an awesome quote. Time to step out of the paradigm of left versus right, right versus, there is right and wrong, but like left, right, black, white, it's not like that. It's not good versus evil. It's not as easy as you would think. I mean, there are evil people out there, but it's not as, simplistic. Yes, it's not that easy. It's a bigger divide than that. And they use fear to control you. So I hope that helps you get through the fear. Mike, we only got a few minutes left. I want you to plug your website and everything really quick for everybody. Go. StratRisks.com. The CIA visits, so should you. I love that. The CIA visits, so should you. And it's Strat Risks. With an S, right? Yep, you got it. And, of course, that's where Raytheon hangs out. That's where the London School of Economics hangs out. That's where Homeland Security hangs out. That's where the State Department hangs out. They all coalesce around my website. Hillary Clinton hangs out on your website. How does that make you feel, Val? Really quick, 20 seconds. Well, I'm interested in what they're looking at, and they're interested in what I'm looking at. Yeah, you got that right. They're very interested. Again, I've seen the logs. Mikey, we're out of time. Thanks for hanging out, brother. It's always a pleasure. Hey, I enjoyed that litany, man, and we'll do it again. Yes, we will. Ladies and gentlemen, we're out of time. Again, look up the litany against fear if I haven't drilled it into your heads already. Recite it, recite it, recite it. Love you all. No fear, only love. I'm out.